Put up your hand if you had a conflict of any kind. I did. All week, every week, we're going to have conflicts. So it's good to get good at it, right? Imagine if you're having car crashes every week. Every time you got in your car, crash. You would start thinking to yourself, I need to go get some driving lessons, or I need to move to the country. Why? Because I keep crashing. Well, this is the same. Conflicts are not inevitable. Certainly most of them aren't. But if I understand how to deal with my relationships in a way that are conflict PhD levels, guess what? I'm going to become a very successful person. Don't have to be intelligent. Don't have to be the most charismatic person. I just need to know the skill that God's asked us to learn about dealing with relationships. And there are so many things we could talk about. We could talk about this for 5 months. We won't. But we could literally go into everything that's important to work out this area. And I know Pastor Jane and I have been married 40 years this year, and we have been through conflicts, right? But we worked it out even beforehand how to avoid the conflicts that were coming. So I can say to you with a great sense of confidence that we are relationship experts, both in the counseling realm, both in the psychology realm, both in the lived life realm, and that's the most important. And then we've raised babies and teenagers and adult children who love God and who are married to the right people, and grandchildren that now we've got our challenge to grow them to be the same. And I want to say to you, so I want to give all that to you, right? I don't think of myself higher than I am, but I want to give what God's given me so your family will prosper. And I've talked to a number of people this week who this week were talking to me about how to resolve conflicts in things that they were going through, things that were happening in their life. And it was wonderful to talk to them and realize some of these things are so simple, it feels like it can't be true. It can't really work, but it is going to work. So let's start working through it today. Let's see how much we can get done before the end of the service, because literally I could do a little while. Okay, I'm going to talk to you today about the seven personas. It's only the beginning we're going to talk about it, the end we're going to talk about it. The 7 personas that you're married to. Let's hope they haven't got all 7, but you're married to one of these personas, and these personas, that's not the one. You can take that one off, thanks. Off. I want those individual slides. Yep, you can take it off. O-F, there we go. There we go, stick with those. Thank you. And so get rid of this one too, please. We've got to get this right. Jesse, where are you? We need you. I've got to get this right, otherwise we're going to get confused. Just talk amongst yourselves while the CG get their things sorted out. There we go. Okay, good. I want to start here. So just follow the page I've got, and that's what you'll need to do. So here's what it says here, right? There are 7 different personalities in your life. And you need to discover whether you're this person or whether your wife or your husband or your children are. And this person is the wall. The person that gives the silent treatment. The person that says, I'm not talking about this anymore, okay? So that's persona number 1. Let's go to the next slide for persona number 2. The persona number 2 is the deflector. You are making this a bigger deal than it really needs to be, and this is the person that doesn't want to conflict and have a conversation, and they deflect, and they point out other things. They get it off topic. The third person is the volcano. This is the person that comes out and goes after you, right? You raise an issue, they respond with an attack. I won't ask you if you're married to one of those, because they might attack you in the service. Here's the thing, the volcano. What about you? You've got problems, you think I've got problems, blah, 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 blah. Okay, next persona is the minimizer. It's not that serious, what are you talking about? Right, that person's about to leave, but no, it's not that serious, etc. That's the next persona. Then the next persona after that is the performer. You know this persona, I'll do better, I promise. I'll do better, I promise. They want peace, etc., etc. And they're the performer. Next personality, I think there's one more maybe, and that's the prosecutor. The prosecutor, you might have been married to a prosecutor. Okay? Let me tell you what you did. And bang, back in 1966, on September the 3rd, you did X, Y, Z, and all the evidence comes up about all the things you've made. Now, what's really amazing is whether you're married or a child or a parent of a child or a young adult, all of these personas are in our lives. These are, science tried out the 7 personas of conflict. And then you've got the last one, which is ghost, the ghost. It's become a very popular term, right? And the ghost is the person that just disappears. And they don't talk to you. They just, they're not giving you the cold shoulder to give you a message. They just disappear. We all know it because we call it ghosting on our text messaging when someone just disappears and doesn't respond. So what I want to talk to, we're going to come back to those, and what I want to talk about at the end is how to have a conversation in conflict with those personas. And what I want you to do is to think about, that's the person I think I'm married to, that's the person that's in my friendship where we have conflict, that's the child I have, that's the parent I have, and identify that's the boss I have, that the co-workers I have, that's my other manager, and I want you to begin to put personas, right? And think of yourself, okay, that's that person. That means that I have to work out how to unlock the door to having a conversation, because the same door is open different ways depending on who's inside. Different lock for each personality, each persona, each archetype. Make sense? And so we need to understand there's a different way for everybody. But first, let's talk about fighting well. Last week we talked about fighting well, and we talked about the 4 attitudes. I know already this week people have used this. The 4 attitudes out of Matthew 18, which is the misquoted chapter about conflict resolution. You have to be, if you want to be great in God's kingdom, you must be a child. If you're going to be a good conflict resolutionist, you have to be a shepherd. You have to desire to find and bring back and rejoin. Number 3, you have to be a brother, which means that you're going to fight it out till there's a conclusion. You don't just walk up and leave out the table. And then the 4th one is a servant. God forgave me so much, how dare I hold that against you? And the balance about what my debt is versus what was forgiven on me is super important. So those 4 attitudes, and as a servant, I don't have any rights to hold that. When you approach your marriage, your relationships, your friendships that way, you're going to find yourself not really having to go to the next steps. And that's the point. We need the attitudes that God wants us to have in order to get the results that we desire to have. And so what we're going to talk about today is, when we should be fighting. How many would like to know when you should fight? How many would like to know when you shouldn't fight? The biggest problem is not that we fight. The biggest problem is that we don't fight. The biggest problem is that we don't fight properly. The biggest problem is we don't actually go to battle for the thing that we married into or said we trusted and believed or desired. And so what happens is it becomes its own cataclysmic event, a slow train wreck happening that the keen observer, I watch it in couples and I go, they've got 5 years, and in 5 years they'll probably be divorced. I haven't said that about anyone here. But when I'm out there, I go, they're going to be divorced soon. If they're not divorced now, they're already living in the same house but divorced. You can tell, right? When you're in it, you can tell really, but we call it the elephant in the room. So let's put up that elephant in the room picture, if we got that original one. That's not it, but we'll get there. There we go. No, that's not the one. We've got the big one. Did I get you? Okay. We're having problems. I had problems getting this stuff together this morning, so it's partly my fault. Maybe mostly my fault. Let's put it that way. How's that for a conflict resolution? Right there in front of you. I'd say it was mostly my fault. Maybe 95%, maybe 98%. See, notice how, like the Fonz, it took me a while to get the, I'm sorry. Welcome to a live laboratory experience. Wow, I didn't even think about that. That could have gone. Anyway, moving on. So, most families don't fall apart because they fought badly. They fall apart because they stopped having the conversation. Not because they didn't care, but because the season changed and the conversation didn't change. I want you to get this part. Every season has a different conversation. Every season must be approached in a very, very different way. So I'm going to talk to you about the 7 pivots you have to make in all of your relationships, depending how long they go for, if you're going to go long and strong and build something that's worth passing on to the next generation. All right? And so let's talk about the road ahead. And before we talk about that, let me talk to you about what I shared a couple of weeks ago about driving. Learning how to drive before you get to intersections where collisions happen is critical. Plan the intersection. The process, let me just say this very quickly, the process is more important than the result. If you get the right result but the wrong process, you're guaranteed to have many, many wrong results, because that right result from a wrong process was a fluke. That was a fluke. The stars aligned. Your wife said yes, whatever, your kids said, and that suddenly worked. But it doesn't work as a standard rule of life, because it's a process. And let me talk to you about this. I was talking to someone this week, and I said, before Pastor Jane and I make any major decisions, and I'm not talking about, critical decisions that are whatever. It might be like, where are we going to go and have our holidays and what Airbnb we're going to stay in. We may have 20 conversations about that before we go ahead and do it. Why? When I was talking to somebody, they said to me, wow, really? Because in their upbringing, and it's obvious to me, in their upbringing, in their background, he said it, she either agreed or disagreed with it, and then they just did it. But then she would change her mind, and it would seem that way, but not really. It's just that the process wasn't followed fully. And in every relationship, you're going to have someone who's very decisive and someone who needs to see it from 360 degrees. And why is it in our relationships we demand that people make decisions the way we do? That's dumb. And I know it's not purposeful, but it's still dumb. Let's call it what it is. People around us, we're attracted to the opposites in most cases. And so the way Pastor Jane makes a decision is very different to the way I make mine. Mine is superior, but she has her way. And I learned very early along that if we don't embrace the process instead of trying to get the result, you are stuck. You are in trouble. I had to be careful what I was going to say. So I can tell myself I'm getting very passionate today. Here's the thing, right? And I'm on painkillers, so I'm going to blame those. I'm on a lot of painkillers, so I don't even know what I'm saying. Here's the thing. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So even going on holidays, I would say, let's have a discussion. We may have 10 to 20 discussions about that thing. What? What a waste of time. Not really, because we're doing life together. And so I always say to our staff, I'm a collaborator. I'm a brainstormer. I'm not, and I know Rick, who's a one-line, get-it-done guy, he already knows what he's going to do, gets frustrated with me because I've got 100 new ideas every time he talks to me. He's like, Pastor, can't you just get on? All right, he's very kind and very godly. But I know deep down in his old soul, man, he's getting frustrated. Why? Because I like to see the whole picture. I want to know that I'm getting the best Airbnb for my wife. It's not for me. I want to get it for her. And so I take a long time. We look at it, we go back. I said, the process of doing that happens for us is this. This is how I do it. This is how I do it in church as well. I want to hear everybody's opinion that's on the board, on the elders, whatever it might be. I don't come with a preconceived conclusion. Yes, I come with a destination, but how we get there, I don't care. So we talk about it, we finish the meeting, and I feel good about it. Then I wake up the next morning, and I feel, I'm not sure about that. So guess what? We have another conversation. And then we have another conversation till it sits one day, sits the next day, sits the third day. Great, we're going to go. Make sense? That's how I do it. All that to just say to you that there's a lot of process in great decision making. And even if you are so smart, can make it in a second, the person you're married to or the person in your relationship needs expression and permission and safety to say what they need to. Right? It's gone very quiet again. It started off very nice. Everyone's gone very quiet. Okay. So, learning how to drive, you've got to learn the protocols before you get into it. That's the safest way. Otherwise, you may get lucky, but you also may not. See, no one tells you when you get married, hey, we're so glad you're getting married. And by the way, there are 7 curves coming up in your road. Major crossroads, major pivots that you're going to make. And if you don't make them, you're going to crash. None of that is in pre-marriage counseling. It should be. There should be a buyer beware warning. This is what's happening. The lemon clause, or whatever we want to call it. Anyway, moving on. So instead of preparing, we complain. Can I tell you, if I took, if I had a little FBI mic on your house, how much complaining would I hear coming out of it? If I was in your office, how much complaining would I hear? If I was in your friendship circle, how much complaining would I hear? Whining about stuff rather than planning to fix it. Okay. So the question is, will you raise the conversation or will you allow your house to become a zoo? Your house is going to be filled with a herd of elephants. So let's start off with point number 1. So here we are. Think about it. We're going to find someone we love. So let's talk about relationships for a moment. We find someone we care about. We love them. And this is the best stage of all. Right? And the reason for it is we share our hearts. We share our dreams. We talk about how it's going to be great to be together. We've got no other distractions, blah, blah, blah. And we get married. He seems to be getting old to get married. Anyway, we get married. And it's all wonderful in those first 3 years, first 4 years, whatever it is. And then what happens is that things start to creep in. For instance, financial stress. So financial strain is the number 1 newlywed conflict. Debt, spending cycles, who controls what of the spend. And some couples go crazy and have 2 bank accounts. Let me just say to you, if you have 2 bank accounts where you've got your money and I've got my money, you've got a long way to go in trust. When we got married, all our money goes together. That's so I can spend mine and spend hers. And you're saying, that's a real thing in my house. Why? Because I don't want to have any secrets with my wife, so she can see my bank account. She's got rocket money. She can see all these things go through, right? We do it together. If you do it separately, that's a sign of a problem. Now, it might be culturally that way for you, and that's fine if that's everything in your life is that, and you're both on that page, great. But I don't think it's a great sign of I trust you even with my money. Money's the biggest conflict creator in those early years. Make sense? Then come the in-laws. And if money was difficult, in-laws are worse. Right? And if you don't deal with that, you end up with a little elephant in the room. Don't put up your hand, but how many know people at least who have got married and have issues with the in-laws that have never been addressed? You're not allowed to talk about it. Why? Because nobody wants their parents attacked, so I get that. But that's a problem. That's allowing an elephant to come into your room. And that has to be dealt with, otherwise you're going to lose space in your relationship. You see, what nobody tells you, you think you're done talking because you're married. Isn't that amazing? We did all our talking before we got married, and after we get married, we have time for talking. Okay? Not so much of a response. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is what Ecclesiastes says. 2 are better than 1. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls down and has no one to help them up. So how do you raise the conversation? Because now there's an elephant in your room. If we go back to that picture, there's an elephant in your room as a young married couple. Everything's great, everything's good, blah, blah, blah. But there's something there that's not been spoken about. Finance, in-laws, whatever it is, spending, etc., careers, they're not there. So what we do, we ignore the conversation, and we're just talking about things. And we need to create a moment where we say, hey, can we sit down this week? In fact, what I want to suggest to you is this. If you want to build something very, very foundational, powerful, you must have a moment every day. And I said this in the first week. I'll say it again. A moment every day. None of this every month thing. Otherwise, what are you doing? Signing in for your manager's report? Every day, or every 2 days at the most, you and your spouse, the one that's closest to you in terms of relationships, should be meeting to talk, have a coffee, have a cup of tea, whatever it is, for at least 30 minutes, if not an hour. Oh, I don't have time for that. Great, you don't have time for a great marriage. It's that simple. Why? Because the cause creates so much effect that without it, it just builds up over time, and then it becomes a torrent and a flood rather than just being, oh, we need to fix this. Make sense? So, we need to talk about that. Then we come to elephant number 2, and this is year 3 to 7. I'm just giving you averages, year 3, 7, right? Here we are in the house, and now we got kids. Okay? And this is what the stats tell us about having children. Have you ever met people that decided because they're having marriage problems they'd have another child? I've met lots. We're going to have this baby, it's going to save us. Wrong. It's going to shipwreck you. Potentially. Anyway, you understand it. Marital satisfaction, listen to this. These are from all the researchers. Marital satisfaction drops significantly after the first child. Conflict, according to the Frontiers in Psychology research, says that conflict increases by a factor of, come on, let's have a guess. By a factor of, who says 1? Who says 2? Who says 3? Who has no idea? 9. With the advent of one child, 9. With the advent of 2, I'm not sure what it is, Hannah, I'll let you know. 2 with one child is a factor of 9. Husband and wife become dad and mum, and the couple disappear inside the parents. This couple have children. They're no longer being a couple now. They're being parents to a child. Wrong. That's going to be a massive problem for you as you get along. You stop talking about each other now and you start talking about logistics. Your turn to get up at 2 a.m. Who's going to do the diapers, etc.? Who's picking up the kids? Who forgot the milk? The intimacy fades. The sexual attraction that was there in the first season starts to fade for many reasons. And one of those reasons can be if you've not been healed, you can find your emotional satisfaction in your child rather than in your spouse. Hello, somebody, big amen, wave a white hanky there. Because that's what happens. So now I get what I need from the child. That is so back to front of how God created it that you are destined for major challenges, not to mention you are putting challenges into your child that they should never have to carry. We're at the 6th week, so I'm being very straightforward, if that's okay. You stop talking about each other and with each other and start talking about logistics. And the reason, and nobody says it, why? Because you're supposed to be grateful. We've got this child, isn't it amazing? Look at what God's blessed us with a child. You don't realize that child's a ticking time bomb because you've forsaken each other in the midst of this other event. And so you have to have a conversation. Okay, now we've got a child. What do? We need to talk about it. Well, I'm tired all the time. And I'm this all the time. And, everyone, it's amazing. I remember when we got married, it was like, marriage is phenomenal and fun. Then we had a child and we're like, oh, no more going out when we want to go out. No more doing what we want to do. No staying up, whatever. Now we're on a schedule. Then we had a second child, and we're like, wow, one was so easy. Anyone been down this pathway? Then you have a third, and you go, two was so easy. What are they all talking about? So that's how it works. So don't think it'll ever get better. It won't. It's just getting worse. So fix it now. Say, okay, we're in a change. We've just had a change. We've had a child. That's a change. We're going to talk about how we relate to one another. And if you're getting married in the future, this is for you, right? How are we going to relate to each other now? How are we going to relate to each other now? We spend more time teaching our firstborn child to handle the secondborn child. Hey, you got a brother coming or a sister coming, and we know there's going to be a bit of jealousy, so we start preparing the older child. We do none of that with each other. And that's why elephants start to grow in our house. And so what happens is we start talking about logistics, and it's the most dangerous moment in most marriages, not because of a crisis, but because of the drift. You don't notice it because you're exhausted. Note that. You don't notice it because you're exhausted. You think the distance is temporary. It's not. The pattern you set in this season will define the next 20 years. Then, how do we raise the conversation? Hey, we've been so focused on the kids that I think we've lost touch with each other a little. Can we protect an hour a night this week? Start to make your arrangements. Do not be a parent that thinks your child runs the universe, because that child will ruin your life as well. Your job is to be the parent. Their job is to be the child. And when you mess all that up, it has great consequences. So we need to talk to each other. Say, okay, we've got a child now. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. Yeah, I want to have sex. No, I don't, because I'm just too tired. Okay, well, how do we fix that? Good conversation to have when you're at that point. If you don't have it, it's going to become a bigger problem later on. Then we move from into the next elephant season, the third fork in the road. This is where we've got children, number of children now, and you see the couple in there with backpacks on the other side, and what's happening now is parenting wars, discipline splits, screen battles, what we call the business partner relationship. One parent is too strict, the other is too soft, but nobody says it. Now, I've watched this in my own kids, so I won't give examples from them, but I can tell you it's a real thing. So you stop. The marriage becomes a logistics operation. You're efficient, but you're not intimate. Pew Research found that 56% of married adults say sharing households chores is very important to a successful marriage. When the labor splits unevenly, and almost always does, resentment builds silently. What nobody tells you, you'll think you're co-parenting, you're actually running parallel operations. Two different playbooks, two different rule systems, and the kids know it. They play you against the other. That's the thing. We sat down and we talked about our kids. Have you noticed? Our kids are playing you against me and me against you. How do we outsmart our children? How do you outsmart your children? Talk. Hatch a plan. So we develop vocabulary. Hey, what did your mum say? You know, blah, blah, blah. Mum, did you say this? And we had these conversations. Why? Because we have to stay united in our relationships, because there are distractions trying to destroy us. And the most important relationship of all is the one that you betroth yourself for life as a symbol of God's design for humanity. Right? So I don't put my kids above my wife. It's one thing I don't do, and she doesn't do the same. Pastor Jane doesn't do that the same either, except a couple of times. But other than that, no, she doesn't. She's awesome. But you understand what I'm saying? It's easy to do those things when no one tells you. And what the scripture is referenced for here, can two walk together unless they have agreed to do so? It's amazing to me, because I've counseled people. I remember counseling one guy who was engaged to a woman, and she was a great lady and so on, but, you know, we started talking. He says, Pastor, I keep getting this scripture, Amos 3:3. do they walk together unless they agree to do so? And he says, I feel that's about the marriage. I said, well, what do you think that says? That's saying, don't get married if you can't walk in agreement. If you have a doubt, don't get married. Guess what? Passion wins out. A year later, they're divorced. Why? Because agreement is the greatest secret to your future. And I think about our companies. One of the things they talked about is when there was remote work happening so much, there was a lack of communal interaction and vision that was tailored around us all running after the same thing. Everyone becomes an individual. Why? Because if I'm not in constant contact in team meetings, why do businesses run team meetings? To stop everybody from just going and doing their own thing and just not coming back to the main thing. The main thing, the whole point of the meeting is the main thing. The whole point of Jane and I is the main thing. The whole point in every one of these conversations is where are we at and what's changed and how are you feeling and what can I do better in this season of your life to make us the same X factor that we were when we first got married. Why drift through misery and child raising and all the things when you can have joy, happiness, and all the other things that come with it? But you can't just do it with a once a week. We have a date night once a week. Really? Just call it sex night. So that's really what one of you wants, at least. And the trade-off is happening. So why not make it every night, every second night? Well, you don't know my schedule. No, but I do know your marriage is not going to survive very well without it. Right? So I know I'm being pretty strong today, and it's because I feel I've earned the right to be strong over many, many decades now. And I know these things work. So I want to help you. In the middle of the world going to hell, in the middle of the world that's in high conflict, wars everywhere, why can't our lives be at peace? I think they can. So, then the next one is what I call year 14 to 18, which is the stranger. This is the stranger curve. What's happening here, right? Let's have that picture up. There we go. What's happening here? Is that the right one? Maybe there's another one coming. Or maybe that is. No. Yeah, it's the next. Okay, that's fine. It's all right. Your child is becoming a different person. Their brain is literally rewiring. So now you're becoming the parent of a teenager. Being the parent of a teenager requires the ultimate grace of God. Any parents of teenagers say amen in the house? It requires the grace of God. It can be a great time, but it also can be a really difficult time as the factories are opening up and the hormones are bouncing all over the place, the brain's rewiring, and suddenly you're talking to your 17-year-old like they're 7. When did you sit down with your 17-year-old and say, listen, hey, I'm sorry, I keep talking to you like this, but now you're this. We need to talk about how would you prefer me to talk to you? How do we discuss these things? I had to do that. I know that happened with Jane and I with Benjamin. For instance, you get to a point when your other kids have grown up where we're just running our lives. And so we're expecting Ben to just say, you ready, Ben? Let's go. And to be flexible. Well, he got to a certain point where he didn't want to be flexible anymore. He wanted some notice. And that seems like, what are you doing? Just get in the car. Stop being annoying. We sat down and talked about it. We said, have you noticed that change that's happening? He's not wanting to just go along with everything. He wants order. He wants to know ahead of time. That's his personality. So we discussed it together and discussed it with him and changed and pivoted. If you don't make the 7 pivots, you're in trouble. You're going to have less satisfaction as you go. And guess what? As we had the pivot conversation, it changed everything. It's that simple. The simplicity is this. If I know what questions to ask, that's why that Sailor app that we're going to launch in a couple of months is going to be so helpful to you. It's going to give you ways of engaging in things that seem difficult, but have real process behind them. And so what happens in this season is that parents either double down on control. Listen to this. There's 2 types of parents who double down on control. And there are others that abandon control. And neither works. And the real danger isn't the teenager, it's the couple. Right? The couple. This is what happens. The fractures amongst children create problems in the parents. Very, very important. And so we need to have conversation. Otherwise, the shift becomes permanent. One of the things I'm very good at, and I had to teach myself to be good at, is pivoting. When a girl came into our family of 3 boys, and her name was Lauren, and she came from a different culture home than ours, I had to make a massive pivot to accept her. I remember she moved into our house just before we came to America, and I get a text message one day. She meant to send it to her husband, Mark, but she sent it to me. And it says this: I hate living in your parents' house. Oh, thanks so much, Lauren. It's not so much joy for us either. And I couldn't say anything to her, of course. I could have, but that would have been bad. So I start thinking long term. Okay, she's here, she's frustrated, she wants her husband, blah, blah, blah. He's in the house, etc. And I hate staying here. It wasn't personal at me. It was really having to go at him, I think. So the point was, but we've had to make pivots. We sit down and talk about, now we've got the daughter-in-laws, Chloe and Lauren. How are we going to pivot? Because they come from different families. They're going to bring a great new vibe, but they're also going to upset our apple cart. We're not going to be the in-laws they don't like if we can help it. We're going to be the in-laws they love. And the beautiful thing for us is both girls have become really part of us because we pivoted to make more room for their voice, their thinking. They didn't have to tiptoe around the house. And it takes years sometimes, but it's worth it. Now it's just cranking. We can talk about anything. We've been through the challenges. We talk about stuff. It's so easy now, but it wasn't easy to start with. But we made the decision, we're going to make this work. All right, the next one is the 40s. Are you ready for this one? All those over 40, here you come. I'm going to say to you something that probably most churches wouldn't say, but they should, and that is this: perimenopause and menopause are a real thing. Come on, somebody. Come on. Pastor Jane and I are going to do a seminar for all those 40, 50 and over to talk to you about what happens and how to have a good sex life during menopause, as well as having a good marriage. And they go together, by the way. So, we're going to talk about the change of life. It typically begins in a woman's life in her mid to late 40s. We know this. There's been no research until recently, maybe the last year or two, on perimenopause or menopause for 30 years. Here, take this, HRT, take this, whatever it is. And they may be good, but they may not be. And so in that time, it doesn't just affect the woman's body, it rewires her emotions, her sleep, her energy, her confidence, and her experience of intimacy. A cross-cultural meta-analysis found that more than 50% of perimenopausal women experience clinically significant changes in sexual desire and function. And a survey of 1,000 divorced women found that 73% blame menopause for contributing to the breakdown of their marriage, and the divorce rate peaks right here in the late 40s. It's coming. The warning has been said. It's coming. You might be right in the middle of it. Well, you can do something about it in the middle of it. And 70% of these women that were divorced said that if their partner had understood what was happening, if they'd had the conversation together, it would have saved the relationship. A study in the journal Menopause found that when husbands were educated about what menopause actually does, their wives' marital satisfaction scores significantly increased. Not because the symptoms went away, but because the conversation finally started. Everything comes out of the conversation. Everything comes out when we kick the elephant out of the room, the stench and all the things that leaves behind in our house goes. So the conversation, don't avoid it. Why? Because if you avoid it, you're just going to have more of it, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And this is what everyone needs to know, that we don't talk about it at the shower for the child that's being born. We don't talk about it at premarital counseling. Nobody mentions it at any time in their life, and it just happens and catches everybody by surprise. I was talking to a guy this week, not from our church, from another one, talking to a guy this week who's going through that with his wife, and his answer is not the right answer. And so I was able to help him begin the process of seeing it different. Here's the deal, right? What we've got to realize is when you're a man in that scenario, your wife is changing because of biology, and you've got to realize it's not her problem, it's your marriage's problem. If you don't fix it, the marriage suffers. She's got the symptoms, but she shouldn't be blamed for the symptoms. If you had them, I had them, we wouldn't like them either. But they can be overcome, and they can be can be brought down to a manageable level, not just through drugs, though that's necessary sometimes, but through conversations. More conversations in that time, the better things are going to get. Isaiah 43 says this, forget the former things. She's not like she was before. Just remember that. It says, do not dwell on the past. Yes, you had a great marriage, but that's over. You're in menopause. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. He doesn't promise that the wastelands won't come. He promises he'll give you a way through the wasteland. Does it make sense? Not meaning to say any woman in that place is a wasteland. That's what I'm saying. But you get what I'm saying, right? How to raise the conversation for husbands. Hey, husbands, I've been reading about what perimenopause does. I had no idea. I want to understand what you're going through. Tell me what it's actually like. I'm not going anywhere. Safe conversations. I wish I'd had that conversation with Pastor Jane. Would have saved us 25 years of marriage hell. No, I'm only joking. It's not true. I'm only joking. Don't get worried. I mean, when I joke, it's only a joke. Anyway, the point is this. All the women are like, oh, that's fighting words. Here's the deal. I didn't have the conversation, so I had to learn out the hard way. And that's when we've got a good marriage where we talk about stuff all through, but that one, I missed it. And then we had to talk about it when she brought it up, and then after some convincing, I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. And we started to go on that journey, and it changed everything in our relationship. Make sense? Okay. Next one is the silence, years 20 to 30. Now we've got a house packed with 15 elephants. And what's happening here is the kids have left, the house is quiet, the empty nesters we know all about, and suddenly we're left looking at each other across a room full of elephants that we've been stepping around for 20 years. We talk about the calendar, we talk about the grandkids, the mortgage, but the dreams, the disappointment, the things you wish you'd said 10 years ago, those stay with the elephants. Did you know that the divorce rate amongst adults over 50 has doubled since the 1990s? So the big area of divorce that's really booming across America is what they call grey divorce. And the fact is that in the 60s, the rate of divorce for 60s has tripled. Why? They found that midlife divorces aren't angry and explosive. They're quiet. They're about growing apart. They're two people who just simply stopped talking about the things that mattered. Every one of these pivots requires a resetting conversation. Tell me what's going on. How are you feeling about this? What can we do? What's our strategy? Because your problem, if it's menopause, is my problem. The problem with children is my problem. The problem with work is my problem. It's our problem. And the more I make it our problem, I have conversations. Can I say this to you? This will be the best marriage advice you'll ever hear in your life. Those 7 conversations, they're like 7 groups of conversations. Those 7 conversations throughout your life will make you the happiest person in life. Because the goal is to reduce conflict and to increase happiness. Be ahead of the game. Don't be caught in the vortex. Don't be caught in the chain reaction of the collisions. Be ahead of the game. Buy a Tesla, drive around it. You know what I'm saying? Be ahead of what's going on. Why? Because happiness is on the other side of the conversation. Misery is on the other side of the non-conversation. Happiness, increased happiness, is possible through every stage. We don't have to look back and go, wow, my college years were great, and wow, getting married was great. We can look forward and say, all these years have been great. That was great. That was great. That was great. That was grace. Put up your hand. Put up your hand if you don't want to be happier in the future. We're going to pray for it. Anyone don't want to be happy yet? So, this is one of the secrets, whether it's at work. Let's say you're at work. Every stage of your development in your workplace requires new conversations. Find a way to talk to your boss that's too busy. You've got to find a way. Ask for mentoring. Come in humbly. The conversations, the right conversations are really important. Okay, I'm going to try to really go very fast in the next 6 minutes. So I apologize again for this series. I just didn't want to do 8 weeks, as you might get bored. But there's just so much to say. Let me take you now to the house that we had at the very beginning, and let's talk about it. Now, let me just talk about one of the pivots that happened in my life. So there was a pivot in my life with one of my sons. And my son's reaction all his life has been very, unhindered. Volcanic, bold. I wouldn't say it was volcanic in a negative way, but it could be. But it was always just binary choices, very, absolute statements and everything. Bang! And I'm a discusser, this kid's coming at me, bang. So this is happening in the teenage years, happening in the 20s, and as soon as they turned in their 30s, I decided, this is not working, right? I've made shifts. They've tried to make shifts, it's not working. We need to sit down and have one of those conversations. This is the pivot conversation. And I've pivoted so many times in my parenting, in my father-in-lawing, and my marriage, that I've got to pivot again. That's how I grow. That's how joy increases. That's why I love my family. Why? Because I've made the pivots. I like to make the pivots before they tell me I have to make the pivots. Getting control of your own pivots, that's a really important thing. So I sat down with my son one day and said, listen, he made some comment. Dad, I feel like you're being personal and whatever. I said, okay, that's fair. So let's talk in a couple of days about how to make this better. A lot of chit-chatting going on. Then we met and I said, listen, you've trained me. And I said, I agree. What I'm doing is not right. So I'm going to stop. But I need you to help me. Because when you come so full force with such and that's not my style, I resist full force just naturally. So when you come full force and it's that's wrong and that's right, and it's not a discussion, it causes me to arc up and react. So I said, and sometimes it comes across as very angry. Even though you're fine, you get over it, it's very angry. So here's what I'd like to ask. I'm going to change, absolutely, but I'm going to ask you to change that style of approach from today. This is important not only for us, it's important for your kids and my grandkids. It's important for everything. He agreed, and guess what? Literally, most of these things don't happen like this, but for him and I, we changed literally within a day. And from that day onwards, all of our conversations, sometimes I'll find myself drifting into the old conversation, and I'll pull myself back because he's not going there. And sometimes he'll go into that place and he realizes I'm not going there. And now we have this discussion-driven, close, brainstorming, positive relationship. We always had a positive relationship, but it started off as a volcano. And then we finished good. And I said, I'm sick and tired of the volcano. Let's just have good from the beginning to the end. And we were able to do that through a conversation. Okay, let's say we're going into a conflict and the 7 personas are up there. You might want to take a photo of it, et cetera, and you may want to watch this message back and so on. So there are 7 personas. Remember we showed you the wall, the deflector, the volcano, the minimizer, the performer, the prosecutor, and the ghost. These are standardized psychiatric, archetypes. And so let's talk about how you go to the house. And the thing I was thinking about this week is how do I give you a metaphor to understand the process? I want you to imagine that you're going to their house. And when you go to somebody's house where it's not a good, the relationship is I can't walk in the house and do whatever I want, there are processes. What's the first process when you go to someone's house? You knock on the door, right? You ring the bell. Come to my house, it doesn't work, so you have to knock again, right? So the first thing you do is to knock. You don't just barge in because we've been together for 20 years. I'm about to address an issue that I need us to fix, so I'm going to knock. The knock is permission to come into the conversation. Make sense? So if you follow the house rules, you'll find it easily. Number 2 is that you come into the foyer. You don't come straight into the lounge. You go into the foyer first. And what do you talk about there? How was the trip? They're taking their shoes off, whatever it might be. Weather was terrible. Traffic in Atlanta, terrible. Yeah, I know, always is, blah, blah, blah. That's why you're always late. I get it. Right? Then from the foyer, you might go into the kitchen, which is where, hey, you want a coffee? Let me get you a coffee. Give me a water, a tea. And you're having, again, you're getting now further in. And then you make it to the lounge where you sit down with your coffee, with your snacks, whatever, you start talking. There is a process like that when I'm talking to one of the 7 personas about a conflict in my life. So what I've written up here for you is when there's a lot more to this, but this is just to get you thinking. The wall, the person who's put the wall up, slide a note under the door. Give advance notice. Hey, I'd like to come around on Thursday and chat. You may not get a response till Thursday, an hour before. But you give them notice. Hey, I'd like to chat. In the foyer, keep it short. Give them an exit ramp. In the kitchen, lead with your own stuff first. In the lounge, one issue, no ambush. Here's what happens with most people. Most people have all these things they want to talk about. There's one that's at the top of the pile that's really, really hurting them. So when they get the opportunity to share the one, they share all 30. And that's an ambush for people, because we should just talk about the one. That's hard discipline to keep to the one. If you can get that one off the top, you can go back another time and get the other off the top and gradually whittle it down. It will not happen in a moment. It's going to take time to get this to work. Make sense? This is the thing. Respect the process. Stop being frustrated for the end. Respect the process. I don't like it either. I want it fixed. But there's a process. Number 2, the deflector personality. Knock with a specific topic. Hey, I want to come and chat about X, Y, Z. Right? Otherwise, they're going to deflect all over the place. Let them deflect once, but then name it. I want to talk about how we're raising our kids, etc. Shrink the asks to one thing. I just want us to be on the same page about raising these kids. You know, what God's been saying to me is, if we have unity between us, our kids are going to prosper. So you're bringing a reason, okay? Then hold the line as they deflect, which they will. Hold the line. Bring them back gently each time to that conversation. Is this helping? Does this make sense? The process? So take a photo if it helps. The volcano. Knock softly, stand back. You ever been to a stranger's house where you're not sure what response? You knock on the door, you take a couple of steps back. And you wait, okay? And signal, because you're signaling this is not an attack, because you know their response is going to be to attack, right? Let the first eruption pass, don't match them, validate the wound under the volume. Hey, I know that X, Y, and Z's happened. Blah, 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 blah. But circle back when the smoke clears and start talking about it. Now, this is not giving you all the subtext. I'm just giving you the headlines. These are time. The minimizer. Knock with evidence and specifics, not emotion. Validate their views in the foyer, then hold yours. Ask questions, let them diagnose it. The person who's minimizing, now, it's not a problem. You know, something's a big problem to you, but not a big problem to them. How do I help them see that it's a big problem to you? Well, this is the one where you have to be cold and you have to be factual and not get emotional, right? And ask them questions. Then the performer, they'll open up immediately. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. I've been wanting to talk about this. Acknowledge words, but don't accept as the finish line. Move from feelings to specifics. What does better look like? How would we do this? And I always look for the cause and effect. I'm looking what keeps this going on. Well, if we have a weekly conversation, that's going to help. If we have a bi-daily conversation, that's going to help even more. Where we're just talking about general things. Why? It shouldn't be the focus all the time. It should just be one of the things that gets brought up in time. Then we have the prosecutor. Knock with an olive branch visible. Disarm first. Expect cross-exam. Don't take the bait. Separate the issue from the identity of the person and just push through with that kind of slow process. The ghost, don't knock, just show up face to face. Not getting any response? Just turn up, right? Don't ask why. Ask what do you need? And be present without pressure. Sit in the silence. So we could go on and on for another hour about this stuff and we don't have time. But if you will start, the point is this, the process matters. I'm not talking about a perfect process, but there has to be a process that identifies in the same way when you go to a house. I think it's a good metaphor. When I go to someone's house, I don't just barge into the lounge room. I go through these places that take me on a journey to that place, and then we can talk more openly. Does that help? Because here's my heart for you as your pastor. If you get good, and I was talking to someone this week, I said, if I look at life, God's given me a good life, not a perfect life. Please ask Him to heal my back before I have surgery. But the relationships I have in my life, because I've been purposeful and I've figured out that there's a process, not just an instantaneous result. That's the biggest mistake we make. When they were 7, they responded like this. No, but they're 27 now. Not going to work. But it doesn't mean I have to be distant. It means I have to rework how to make this relationship as prosperous as it could be. Because here's what should happen. When I go to Thanksgiving and when I go to Christmas, that should be when it's the most exciting. Our family last Thanksgiving, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we took our kids and grandkids, we all went to Maui together, right? They got a free house, we had free frequent flyer points, we all went to Maui for a week together. When you're not close, you don't look for those moments because it costs money, and why would you want to hang out with people you don't like? Because we work on, and then we're working on getting the couples, our son and his wife, to be happy with the other son and his wife, to be happy now with Ben and his new wife, when she comes, right? Maybe we just sing hallelujah at that point. But all of those, they're going to have to get on. Then we're going to try to get the grandkids to love each other. So this week, we've got 2 of our grandkids all week, 7 days. Pray for us. The parents are going away, right? So we invited all the other kids to come down. Anyway, it's all has to be managed, led, not just leave it, not just hope. Lead it, and if you lead it, you'll see the results of it. And I just pray, this is my prayer, and I'll finish here. I just pray that if you do this, if you seriously apply yourself to the understanding of conflict, a lack of conversation isn't a lack of conflict. Silence isn't peace. Silence is just silence. Peace is from the heart, through the mind, and the spirit. It's peace on all fronts. That's what God promises you and I, if we put Him first, if we apply His principles to our relationships. Let me say it to you again. The process matters more than the result. I remember talking to a guy this week and he wanted to ask my advice about stuff, and we got to the end of it where we talked about the process. He said, I actually don't need to ask you about what I should do. I said, good. Because now you've got a lot of work to do in the process in order to make sure it's God that's taking you and your family on a particular journey or not. And when you do it that way, it's slow and then fast. Slow, fast, as opposed to fast, drama, 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 drama.